I know this time doesn't suit many people, so we don't see too many people on the call. But it is a chance we're going to share a small amount of information, very generally on Dublin as a destination for high school students. And it is an opportunity just to ask any questions that you might have. We have a chat box which you can pop them into as we go through, and Laura will be moderating and interrupting me with anything that I've missed. And then later on in the call, we'll allow you to turn your mics on or turn your cameras on, ask questions about anything that's, of interest to you or of concern or you haven't been able to work out so far. And I'll do my best to answer those also. With a small group, hopefully it won't be a very long presentation. So I'm going to get in and get started. Well, there's a slightly younger version of me. I'm speaking to you tonight from Dublin, Ireland. I'm CIE's Centre Director here in Dublin and have been for 4 years. So 2023 will be my fifth summer running high school programs for CIE in Dublin. And before that, I was involved in high school programs with other language schools, primarily in Dublin and around the world for about 15 years. So there's a rather sunny picture that Dublin looks nothing like at November. So looking forward to having people here back in May, June, July when it's blue again. People are probably looking at different high school programs, and just want to talk about a little about, well, what differentiates Ireland or Dublin from all those other programs that CIE offers around the globe for high school students. So the city itself, Dublin's an old city, but an old city with young people. So we were founded more than 1,000 years ago, but 50% of the population are aged 26 or below. So we did have a culture of emigration that drove a lot of our older people to the United States and to the UK and Australia. And we get quite a lot of students who are coming back because of that family connection. But also Dublin is a kind of a tech and education hub within Europe, and a startup centre. So we get a lot of young entrepreneurs coming into the city, which has sucked in this younger populace. So for high school students coming here, being surrounded by other young people is quite engaging for them. And it also allows us to do a lot of site visits to young startup companies on the entrepreneurship program and to young socially concerned individuals on the leadership and social justice program. The country itself, for me, it's a big country. It takes 3 hours to drive across. But Ireland's a small place. If we were in the Union, we'd be the 25th state of the Union. And from Dublin itself, you only have to go 10 miles from the city centre to be up into the mountains, out of farms, along the coast, on beaches, seeing all the different shades of green. So the city itself is, like any other cosmopolitan European capital city, but it only takes minutes to get outside. So on our high school programs, we like to get students away at weekends, to get them out for excursions, sometimes in the afternoon. So they're not just seeing the city, but they're seeing the Ireland that they probably have the image of. Our programs, we're running high school summer programs in Dublin for, I think, 8 years now. I've been involved for the last 5. And we've been fine-tuning them to make them more engaging and educational for students. We started with just the Global Entrepreneurship Program, which we've been running in its current form since I started, since 2018. And then in 2020, we added the Leadership and Social Justice course, which we've been tweaking the last 2 years, and we're happy with how it is now. And the idea is that, it's more than class. You're taking classes in the morning that should be engaging and relevant for students. They're combined with co-curricular site visits that add something to the course, that add something to the learning. So on an entrepreneurship program, that might be meeting with, a founder of a local art cafe, and they'll speak through their business journey and their, using the techniques that they've been learning in class, and explain how they applied those to their own real life business. Or if it's a social justice course, might be meeting members of the Irish traveller community, which is Ireland's only indigenous ethnic minority, and they'd be speaking to the challenges that they've encountered, and students trying to draw parallels then to the US experience. But then it's not all class. We also include excursions to the west of Ireland, to County Wicklow to the south, that aren't tied to the class experience. They're just tied to being a high school student overseas and wanting to go out and explore the world and meet your peers. Probably what differentiates us most from other CIE programs is, with just ourselves, London and Cape Town are operating in English language first environments. So there's no language learning component. We do offer a kind of an introduction to Irish language as part of the orientation, but the day-to-day spoken language on the program is English, and in the country is English. So it really increases the opportunities that your students, your children have to engage with the community around them. They can talk to anybody and anybody can talk to them. There's no language barrier. The program specifically here in Dublin, we run two to three. We have one that's called the multi-site program, which is the global entrepreneurship program across 3 sites. It starts in Dublin, moves to Copenhagen, and moves to Berlin. But tonight I'm just focusing on 2. So global entrepreneurship and what we have called in the past leadership and social justice. We've just rebranded as advocating for leadership and social justice, because it's moving more into the space where the students are actually engaged with peers and with advocacy groups here in Dublin. And the last 2 years, that hasn't been possible to the same degree because of COVID-19. So we're hopeful for 2023. Why students love it? It's small groups of students. Our class sizes are up to around 15 or 16. Hands-on activities. It's not teacher lecture based. It's students working through projects. On the global entrepreneurship course, they follow a series of kind of scaffolded or structured tasks that results in them ultimately pitching as part of a group exercise a business to a panel of experts looking for seed funding. On the social justice course, it's taking a particular aspect of perhaps a marginalized or socially excluded group in Ireland and bringing through recommendations for how they could be engaged by government or better treated by health and welfare services, and again presenting that to a local panel. So the lesson plans and the day-to-day, it's coordinated with the excursions and the activities, kind of a loop learning idea. So what you learn in class in the afternoon, you might see in practice, or in the morning, you might see in practice in the afternoon in the site visit. And then our housing, because we're a first language destination, we don't use homestay housing like most other programs. Students stay in single ensuite housing and shared apartment clusters. I'll explain a bit more what that means on site, but basically they're living in purpose-built student residences with other CIE participants and program leaders. What does the day-to-day life look like? I guess Monday to Friday are a little different from Saturday and Sunday, but outside of class, you're looking at historical and cultural sites and treasures. It's not just about learning about business or learning about social justice and advocacy. You're in Ireland. It's a rich historical country. You want the postcards, you want the photographs of those sites. So we're going out to visit, Epic Museum or the Hill of Tara or the Hope Cliff Walk, or joining students at a Sunday market. So we're including all those things. You're interacting with guest speakers and local representatives. Lots of them come back to us year after year. So with the Global Entrepreneurship Program, we're always lucky to have Joey from Pizza Records, who set up his own label, and he's 23 now. Seems old because he's been doing this for 5 years. On the social justice course, we've worked with a guy called Glenn Gannon, who spent huge lengths of time. He's lost his business. He ended up homeless, and then he ended up starring in Hollywood movies 10 years later, and he's able to kind of talk through that journey. With our programs, because they're living in purpose-built student housing, their meals are a mix of restaurant visits or catered to the student residence itself. We like to use the rooftop there. It's a lovely flat roof with a view over Dublin. It's very safe. It's the 5th story, but you can't even flick a packet of potato chips off it. But it gives a wonderful view. And when we have, one of the nice things about coming to Dublin in summer is that it stays bright until after 10 p.m. We don't want our students roaming the streets until 10 p.m. at night, but we do want to make use of that natural light. So we hold activities on the rooftop. Other things the students have enjoyed is visiting Glendalough, a 6th century monastery just to the south of Dublin in a spectacular mountain valley. cooking Irish cuisine. We do try to get students involved in hands-on. It's lovely having your 3 meals a day served up to you, but it's nice to get involved as well. Traditional Irish Gaelic games. You can see the bottom photo in the bottom right hand corner there is students from last year's high school summer program, with Irish students learning how to play the traditional Irish sport of hurling. And a site visit I always enjoy is to a place called Causey Farm, where the Leadership and Social Justice Program look at sustainable farming practices. And they also engage in bog diving, which is as horrible as it sounds and is also, but very enjoyable. Also, what we always say, bring a spare change of clothes. The housing itself, for the high school summer abroad program, we've been using the same housing since 2019 because we're very happy with it. It's a provider called Highlight Student Living. We think it provides a really nice balance between, your independence and your personal space, but also the security you want and need from being overseas and being young. So students have a room like you can see in the picture. They've got their own bed with storage underneath and wardrobes and a study space. They've also got their own bathroom, shower room, that's all lockable doors. And then they share a kitchen and living space with up to 7 other participants and program leaders. So for this summer, we had 40 students across the 2 programs, all living in the one building, with 4 program leaders living there as well to keep an eye on curfews and behavior and cleanliness. All the meals are included in the program fee. So breakfast is at the apartments in those shared kitchens. I would just provide a selection of kind of fresh and prepared foods. Students, pick what they want, and that's what we continue to buy afterwards. Other meals are a mix, mostly of catering or local restaurants. We do provide some stipends when we go on excursions, to, for example, Merrion Square Food Market. We'll give the students €10 for lunch. They get to go out and pick what they're going to eat that day. And then in the evening, we sometimes have activities in the evening. If we don't, we have kind of hangout group activities at the residence. The residence itself has a lovely common spaces with, ping pong tables and cinema room and board games, and then also that rooftop space I mentioned earlier on. Whew. And that's a lot of me talking very quickly and very generally. I want to open it up and answer any questions that people might have about Dublin, about high school. There's really only a couple of people on the call, so feel free to turn on your microphone, your camera, or to type it into the chat box. If there are no questions, Laura might break the ice with some of the questions that we've heard historically.
Okay. It looks like we have a question about safety. Is the city safe?
Sure. Yeah. Dublin's a very safe city. We have hundreds of students on program every year, not just high school students. Currently, we have 30 or 40, 38, I think, college students here in Dublin. We also have 6 year-round high school students. Dublin's a medium-sized city, about 1 million people. There's no, it's assessed at the lowest risk level by the Department of State for the US. No city is 100% safe. But in the last 5 years, we've had only 2 incidents of students reporting having something robbed. And they were non-violent robberies, kind of petty. My mobile phone was taken off a table when I was sitting outside a restaurant, or I lost my wallet, or I'm not sure if I lost it. Maybe somebody picked my pocket. And within the high school program itself, we've had no reported health and safety issue, crime, or sexual harassment or anything like that. So it would definitely be considered one of the safest destinations. The whole way that the high school study abroad program is structured is to, have the students' times fairly full. We do give them a small amount of free time, but it's structured free time because ultimately we want to keep it in parameters that keep everything safe. For me, as the director, I tend not to be involved day to day with the students. I meet them from time to time, but all the big problems come to me. So I want to minimize those big problems by keeping it as safe as possible. And then the parts of the city that we choose to locate things in then are areas that we know are safe to walk in at night. If, you know, we have curfews and things like that, but, you know, we know that students can go out independently right up to curfew without any issues. To that note, actually, the way we structure things is that we ask where students are not attending an activity with us in the evening, you know, if they did have a bit of free time or activity finishes, you know, just after dinner or whatever, they are required to be back at the student residence at 9 in their own apartment cluster with the 7 or 8 other participants at 10, and then in bed and lights out by 11. And the student residence we use then has only one entrance and exit at night, which is manned 24/7, so that the students and ourselves know that, you know, nobody can go out, you know, without us being alerted. There's a long way around to me saying yes, I believe it's a safe destination.
So I have food sensitivities. Will there be ways for me to like deal with this?
Yeah, absolutely. Every year we have, you know, students with, you know, every different allergy you can imagine, with different preferences, with different religious requirements or dietary requirements. As part of the application process, we ask students to declare all that, and then we plan accordingly. At the same time, we know that, you know, students fill in these declarations maybe in December, and, you know, everything's changed by April or May. You know, they've decided to become a vegan, or they've discovered an intolerance that they weren't previously aware of. And as long as we're updated on that, we manage it. You know, it's not a problem. So, you know, comfortably in Dublin, we can manage any student with, you know, lactose intolerance issues, with a vegan diet, kosher diet, halal. You know, there's nothing, you know, as students with huge seafood allergies, we manage them all the time without any risk or concern. And also, you know, we don't default back. You know, we still like to keep a varied diet to the highest degree that we can. We don't want, you know, somebody eating just pizza every day because that's what they can eat.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, but with these and with other health requirements, we, you know, it's just really about students and their parents advocating for themselves and just making sure that we know what we need to know, and then on our end it's easy for us to manage. It brings to my mind, and because we're recording this to send out to people, a question that is asked, which is, you know, just to do with accessibility and mobility. You know, generally the high school programs, there is an expectation that there's a decent amount of walking on them, you know, walking to class, walking to site visits. But, you know, this doesn't preclude anyone that has mobility issues. You know, we might do a cycling activity, but some students can't ride a bike. Again, as long as we know, you know, a student coming on programs, a wheelchair user, our residents are wheelchair accessible, we make slightly other plans based on that information.
Do we have any other questions? Again, feel free to drop them in the chat.
The last thing I'll get, because the chat will appear in the in the recording as well. I'm just popping in the HS Abroad email, which is HS Abroad, excuse me, highschoolabroad@tie.org. And that's just the general email. Anything that finds its way in there will be directed to me if it's Dublin relevant, or to colleagues in other CIE sites if they're more practical. So, you know, no question is too obscure, too small, too irrelevant. You know, just drop it in there and we'll get an answer back as quickly as we can always. It's always the elephant in the room for all these calls for the last time. So I'm just going to pick up the slide that I normally hide at the end, which is COVID-19. It's less of an issue, obviously, in most locations than it has been in years bygone. And this information will change probably between now and then. But on CIE programs, or within Ireland, 93% of the population here in Ireland is vaccinated if they're over 12. Face masks are advised on public transport, but no other locations other than hospitals are they required. And on our programs, our high school program of 2021 was one of the first CIE programs worldwide to run in the COVID-19 era. That year we didn't have any cases of COVID-19 on our high school programs. We did in 2022, and we managed those in line with local requirements. Students were able to form their own bubbles. They weren't socially isolated, but they weren't able to actively participate for a couple of days until their health had recovered. Those restrictions are much lighter now than they are typically in the US. CIE still has its own protocols in place, but it hasn't gone away yet. It won't go away, but we manage it on these international programs the whole time. Well, if there are no other questions, I don't know, Laura, if you have any questions that pop into your mind that you heard on other calls. If not, the HS Abroad email is there. Please reach out to them. Thanks very much for joining today. We know it's not a great time with most students in school, most parents in various employments or study themselves. So thanks very much for joining the call. The recording will be sent out afterwards, and do reach out if you have any questions. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.